All right, good morning, everyone. This is the Monday, July 18th meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Supervisors. I'm Darren Hamilton, Chairman of the Supervisors this year. We'll go ahead and start with our meeting agenda, which is acknowledge the minutes from the previous meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Drish, a second from Sandquist to approve the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. All right, let's meet with our county engineer, Mr. Dwayne Hines.
Good morning, supervisors. I hope you all had a great weekend. The road crews have been busy getting contract rock. Right this week, they will be on Juniper, starting at the county line, heading north towards Libertyville Road, and that should take them a good chunk of the week. We've got a couple of our railroad tank cars in for the 220th bridge over by Tamarack. We're going to replace that bridge with a dual tank car. And that'll happen after we get done with the contract rock, hopefully the end of this month. We're still working on design for the Palm Avenue bridge replacement with a flat car. Got a pretty good handle on what we're going to do. It's just a matter of, again, we've got the cars ordered for the replacement. And then when we get done with contract rock, we can work on building a temporary access for the resident side of the bridge. We have the pre-con for the 32nd Street Patch and Overlay project tomorrow. Cedar Falls Construction, the subcontractor that Denko used on Pleasant Plain Road, is in southeast Iowa, so they'd like to get started on their patchwork portion for that. So as soon as I have a firm date on when they're scheduled to be in, we'll notify the local media so that residents can be aware that there's going to be a delay or two, and you might want to choose an alternate route for travel. Okay. What else do we have going on? Last week, as part of our road tour, we stopped by the Pleasant Plain shed.
Yeah.
You guys asked me about some of the environmental aspects of that. So that has 2 inches of spray foam, which is equivalent to R14, which is kind of the standard for a 2x6 construction home. And that's to help make the floor heat more efficient and more effective. And we have the floor heat to heat the ice, melt the ice and snow that gets built up underneath the motor graders when they're out plowing for winter control. Because, you know, in all intents and purposes, snow removal is our main function. You know, keeping the rural roads passable at all seasons, whether it's with rock or with snow removal. That is our bread and butter. And so to power the floor heat, we're installing solar cells at the cost of around $26,000. And that will have a 25-year life expectancy on those solar cells, should have about a 14 or 15-year payback. We'll see how that actually works. They've been around long enough. It should be a fairly accurate estimate. It's not my specialty, but there's enough people that do that I'm comfortable with their projections. And we're looking, as we've discussed, we're looking at doing that to all our grader sheds. The ones that we have through utilities, through Access Energy, will not have as rapid a payback because they don't have as good a reimbursement as Alliant does, but it's still worth the expense. And then we're also looking at our next grader shed that we want to do is to replace the Packwood shed. And we're working on developing kind of a template specification for what our grader shed should be.
Can you talk about the rainwater?
I was just going to ask. Yes, we have indoor plumbing at Pleasant Plain now as well. And the Rural Water Association in that area wanted an ungodly amount of money for a water hookup. And all we need is to be able to flush a toilet and wash our hands. So we went with the stormwater capture that channels the water that hits the roof into a 750 gallon holding tank buried in the ground and an on-demand pump so that we can have indoor plumbing. We have moved our grader shed and Pleasant Plain into the 20th century.
Everything's marked non-potable.
Yes.
Okay.
So well, I suppose if you're really thirsty, you could drink it, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Right, I wouldn't recommend it either. It's always a safety precaution to have
Yeah.
something like that marked so that
Mhm.
somebody that's new to the garage coming in to visit doesn't say, oh, I'm thirsty. And
Yeah, get a glass of the clear and sparkling. And I think that's all I have for you guys this week. Everything else is just kind of plugging along, doing what we do.
Okay,
Thank you, Dwayne.
yeah, thank you, Dwayne. That's a nice update on that garage up there. It's really looks a lot better than what it used to. And it's gonna function a lot better for the driver out there, and all the garages that we go ahead and do that with are gonna be pretty good.
One of the added benefits of that spray foam is it is a bright white, whereas before those grader sheds were awfully dim and dreary looking. So now you get a lot of reflective, secondary reflective light. So it's, whether you're working on something or just in the environment, it's a lot more pleasant.
Good. All right, next we're going to meet with Annie Pole to discuss an objection letter regarding the Navigator pipeline. So Annie, go ahead. You can speak from there.
Oh, is
They
that
can
okay?
see you and the speakers up here,
Oh,
the
good.
microphone's up here, so it'll pick you up.
All right, well, good morning, and my name is Annie Pillay, and I have Mark here with me, and we're just I'm gonna read just a statement here explaining what we're asking the board to consider. So I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak about an important and time-sensitive issue for Jefferson County. As you know from the email that I sent you last week, I'm here today along with other members of our Sierra Club as well, and some of our local landowners, to respectfully request that the Board of Supervisors please consider submitting a letter to the Iowa Utilities Board objecting to the permitting of the proposed Navigator liquid CO2 pipeline. The pipeline will run across a portion of our county and is neither wise nor safe for our citizens and our treasured farmlands. There will be no benefits to our county residents from this pipeline. However, there will be great risks to our citizens and our lands. Pipeline construction permanently damages the land and threatens waterways. We know there were many instances during the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline where topsoil and subsoil were mixed, damaging the soil structure and decreasing crop yield. There were also instances where drainage tiles were not reconnected, causing flooding on valuable farmland. Liquefied CO2 pipelines are dangerous. In the case of a pipeline rupture, and I say rupture, it's not a leak, because this is concentrated and pressurized liquid CO2, it quickly spreads through an area. They say about 1,300 feet in about 4 minutes. So this is very concentrated liquid CO2 that starts to vaporize once it comes out of the pipeline. And it's an asphyxiant. Anyone in the immediate area, outside or in homes or in vehicles nearby, will be impacted and would experience serious breathing difficulties, nausea, headaches, unconsciousness, or even death. The same will occur to pets, livestock, and wildlife in the impacted area. Because liquid CO2 is heavier than the surrounding air molecules, it displaces the oxygen, it displaces the atmosphere. So you have pure CO2, making both diesel and gas-powered combustion engines useless. This makes it impossible to escape the area in a vehicle until the gas dissipates. And it also makes it impossible for emergency vehicles to operate in the area. This happened a couple of years ago in Mississippi, about central Mississippi. Around 200 people were evacuated from the area around a CO2 pipeline rupture. 45 people were taken to the hospital with those very same symptoms I just mentioned, including unconsciousness. Also, this is not a pipeline that will provide public benefit. It is not a public utility. Therefore, the concept of eminent domain should not apply to this privately owned pipeline being built for private gain. Eminent domain and easements last until the end of time, and the current tax credit that all the pipeline companies are filing is valid only for 12 years. Landowners worry that the pipeline will then be sold and perhaps CO2 transport will end, and the pipeline might be used to transport other materials like ethanol or some other substance. Costs to repair the wear and tear to our county roads from heavy machinery will fall to the public of Jefferson County, not to the Navigator company. Given all of these risks to our citizens, we don't see how allowing the Navigator pipeline to run through our lands would benefit Jefferson County. So attached to the email that I sent last week were 2 sample objection letters with language that's been utilized by at least 32 out of, I believe, 36 other Iowa counties that would be impacted by the proposed pipeline. I hope you will take this important step of letting the Iowa Utilities Board know that the citizens of Jefferson County do not support the construction of this pipeline within its jurisdiction, especially through the use of eminent domain. The IUB has not yet made a decision regarding the pipeline, so there's still time for Jefferson County to submit an objection letter. There are no legal repercussions to sending the letter. Your objection would simply be recorded as evidence in the permit hearing, but cannot be used against our county. Navigator cannot pursue legal action against any county that submits a letter. Incidentally, if despite objections from counties and the public, the pipeline should be permitted, there are additional points we may want to know regarding safety. For example, some counties that have chosen to require Navigator to set up an escrow account within the county in the event of a leak or other pipeline event. The dollar amounts promised by Navigator in the agreement do not begin to cover the likely cost of such events. And finally, you may want to check with our local emergency management system to see if they're equipped with any electric vehicles that can function in the area of a CO2 rupture to retrieve victims, since internal combustion engines do not work in the presence of concentrated CO2. Thank you so much for your time and attention to this important and time-sensitive matter. And may we ask if one of the letters provided might be acceptable to you, and if you have any further questions. And if you need the letters, I do have copies of both of them.
No, we look out of both here in the
Thank you.
folders. Any questions?
No, I see it's on our agenda as
Just discuss.
discussed. I mean, I think it's a valid concern. I went to the meeting at Walton last December, I believe it was. You were there. And there were many of the farmers there that are going to be affected. And many of them were the same farmers whose land was torn up with the Dakota Access Pipeline, which is unfortunate. And they were very much against it. And I think the fact that it's not a public benefit is a huge something to consider.
Okay, Susie, did you have anything?
No, not this time.
Okay. You have a comment, Steve?
I have some information on the last one,
Sure.
and I have some
The
information.
last one, the,
This is current.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
This here, this one they came through the last time. The mixing of the soil.
Yeah, it sounded to me like they didn't strip the topsoil, set it aside,
If you're,
and then put it back like they should, which is the
They're not even
subsoil
close.
then the topsoil.
those are the violations. The pictures show the things about it, and then nobody's addressed it. I've been to the Iowa Utility Board. I've talked to the governor. I've talked to somebody else. And nobody calls me back, nobody does anything. This Lejeune guy was at the meeting at the Walton, and he said, contact me. He said, well, you need to write to the governor. So the governor got no response from that. One thing you forgot, this condensed CO2 comes out at 400 degrees below zero. It freezes the valve shut. And if you take steel, put it at 400 degrees below zero, hit with a hammer, it'll shatter. This is not a real good deal at all. The mixing the soil, you'll see one of the photos in there where they've taken a bulldozer and they shed topsoil across my farm because they had to have a haul road through it. And I told them about it. Nothing was addressed on it. I think I got one. Here you can see, top mix.
Mhm.
And you got topsoil, you got subsoil, you got parent material.
Correct.
They're coming through. That was a haul road close up. It's upside down. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
And I showed that picture to the guy, the inspector was there, and didn't do anything about it. Made a note of it, didn't do anything about it. You can obviously see that's on the top, that was on a haul road to my farm. When they went through my farm, they dug places 30 feet deep. They went through 11 terraces. I have no idea how many tile lines they tore up. They have one system that's clear gone. And when you dig a 30-foot hole in the ground, they put the terraces back to the original grade height. But if you put 30 foot of fill on a terrace, the soil shrinkage brings the soil down. The inspectors from the last job were the operators on this job. And the operators from this job will be the inspectors on the next job. So you just put them in positions. It's the same people. It's all funded by BlackRock. BlackRock is one of the major people that are doing more harm to our environment than anybody I know of. The pipelines can be sold to other people. The easements can be sold even if they don't use it. And when you take and dig a 30-foot trench and you're into the subsoil, the water veins that go through there have been disturbed. You plug them up. I've got damages amount over $200,000 in my place now. Nobody wants to address it. It's not at the pipeline. It's put 2-3 football fields away where I've got seats that wasn't there before because the water can't go to small plastic. So this pipeline, we're going to pay for it in taxes. It's a tax abatement. If there wasn't a tax abatement, they wouldn't be doing it. They're only after the money. They said they're going to have all these Iowa jobs going to create. I saw one Iowa plate and I thought one Iowa on that whole job that came to my place.
Well, and they said at that meeting at Walton, they hired out of Iowa people to work on the pipeline.
That's what they told us. But I just to the point now that, they made their own rules for how to redo the dirt and stuff in there and didn't follow their own rules. They just did whatever they wanted to do. And they got one of the inspectors as well. It's easier for us to ask for forgiveness than just to ask for permission.
If I may make a comment. So, building on what Steve said, if it happens, if it gets permitted, which I sure hope it doesn't, having listened to that, that they hire an inspector, they will want you to hire an inspector that they've selected.
Well, no, and it was one that we selected.
Well,
And the one we selected already is French Reniker,
French Renters
who
fine.
did inspection.
Usually
the
they
last
want
time
people to do
for us.
ISG people who are their people.
No,
You're not having that.
we're
Good,
not doing that.
good. Glad to know you're on that.
Okay.
Is it possible to ask, can we request that you make a decision on this? Not today, but can you get it on your agenda to make a decision, whether you would file an objection?
We can, yes.
I would make that request.
Okay.
I want to make one further statement that, they went through a lot of drainage systems
Mhm.
and they dug under them. And no matter what you do, there's going to be settling of those tile lines. They bridged it across with aluminum pipe and stuff tile between it. It's still going to bow. These problems are going to arise as this stuff sags. Those drainage systems are not going to go bad in the first 3 years like they talk about. This could be 15, 20 years down the road. I did drainage for over 20 years and I can tell you, things shift, things settle. And we got problems coming that are way more than what we've seen so far. It's just going to catapult on us. It's just not a good deal at all. And the use of eminent domain from a private company, from the private people, I just want to agree with that. I told him last time, I said, I'm letting you pipe.
Well, that's something that was settled by the Supreme Court here in the United States a little while back, a few years ago, about eminent domain and how it could be used. Actually, one of the judges on the Supreme Court benefited from having the ruling go the direction it did.
Imagine that.
Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah.
So,
But I think the only thing we've got right now is what we have. I just feel that we need to take care of our own county.
mhm.
It's going to benefit us and the people that you guys represent the best as possible. And I think that photo thing I gave you there, how that money flows and how even, you got Branstad, you've got Leisure, you've got Governor. I mean, you've got people taking money from these people that is just, it's just not right. I mean, but if you have any questions about me, I'm happy to stay around.
Yes,
My name's Ryan Keller,
yeah, Ryan.
and as you're familiar, I'm with the Navigator, and I will be more than happy to arrange for a meeting that's Navigator, because we did have a public meeting with that and brought Navigator folks, our subject matter experts, because there's some misinformation. Just even this flow chart that this gentleman put, we have no affiliation with Branstad. Our company is privately funded. We're not getting any tax money. There's no taxpayer money that's being offered or accepted for our project. There is, therefore, if there's a lot of the concerns that were raised here, that's even with, because we have met with emergency management, as you know, that we are scheduling I just kind of jotted down some quick notes that we're meeting with emergency managements in the first quarter of next year, presenting them emergency management, because that was the finding as our experts had shared with you at that public meeting. That's the emergency managements in the cities in Mississippi for that unfortunate incident had no idea there was a CO2. I don't have the answer for an engineer if he thinks that the safety valves would freeze. That's not a temperature. I don't have that answer, but I certainly can get one of the engineers that's there.
And the public meeting that we held on that was out at the Cambridge building at the fairgrounds. And I invited all of the emergency personnel that we have in the area here to come and be in attendance at that meeting. We had our sheriff there and our emergency management coordinator, Rick Farrell, was there, as well as the city fire chief. There was no representation from the city police department or the mayor's office. But Susie and I were at that meeting. Dee was there as well. So, it was open to the public. There was an opportunity for the public to come to that. I know that we've had a few people tell us, no, that wasn't a public meeting and it never was published or anything like that, but we have proof that we did that as well. And so it wasn't something that was done in being hidden or anything like that. So, we got a lot of good information from that meeting, and it was quite a few members of the group, Navigator group, that came and spoke about different aspects of what we're going to go on with it. I'm not going to go into depth on it because I don't know all of everything that was discussed and how that would all work, but it would be good to do another meeting along those lines and try to get the public out to actually come and listen to it rather than just coming at us later saying, well, we heard there was a meeting and you guys never published it, kind of thing.
So I think the biggest thing is to have another meeting.
Yeah, I do
The
too.
personalities out of it.
It's like I said.
A couple of points on this.
Yeah.
You say that there's no taxpayer money involved in this project?
I said that Navigator is not taking, accepting, or using taxpayer money.
What do you call the tax credits that this thing is based on?
We're not going to get into that kind of
All right,
discussion
but
right
I'm-
now. That's something we can do at a meeting, okay?
Okay,
At a
that's
separate
fine, but
meeting, appreciate
I
it.
don't like it when this kind of disinformation gets put to public officials trying to make a decision.
Mhm.
So I'm just want to point out to you,
Right.
that's a disingenuous statement.
Okay.
But true.
And I think one of the points of clarification, there's 3 different pipelines going through Iowa. So You're speaking only to the one going through Jefferson County.
That's correct.
Right.
I
So the
understand
other
very-
two may have different
Different models.
models, different funding. But the bottom line, I guess, for me is the eminent domain issue.
Mhm.
I just,
Mhm.
my personal opinion is it's not appropriate
No,
for,
and that's
if
a
it's not a
state
public
level,
use.
that's a state level decision when it comes to the use of
It
eminent
is,
domain.
yeah.
So,
But it's an objection that you can file with the IDA.
right, which, you know,
That's all we're asking
yeah.
at this time.
All right, any other discussion? Anybody on with us that would like to ask a question or have anything to add to this? We have Kelly Spees, Tom Drish, Tammy Merrill, Lipa, Patrick McVan, Marianne Nordike, Devin Hall, Deb Book, Carol Simmons, Arnie, and Walton, excuse me, and the supervisors. So, okay, hearing no comments, we'll move on to our next agenda item, and we will look at setting up a meeting with Navigator once again for the public. What time frame we'll have that in, I'm not sure of right now, but that's something the supervisors will discuss together. And at that time, we'll also come up with a decision as to whether or not we're going to sign the letter that's presented, one or other copy of it. So, all right, next item on our agenda is ARP update.
We have about 2 minutes.
Oh, we have 2 minutes. Okay. We've got 2 minutes before we need to do our public hearing on amending the ATV, UTV ordinance that the county currently has. So. All right, I would take a motion to open the public hearing.
8:59.
Okay. Well, 20 seconds. Okay, it's 9 o'clock.
Motion to open public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion from Sandquist, a second from Drish, open the public meeting or public hearing for the ATV, UTV off-road utility vehicles ordinance here in Jefferson County. We currently have one on the books. What we are doing is amending one to go along with what the state of Iowa just did with allowing these kind of vehicles to be used across the state. Currently, we charge a fee of $35 for a licensing tag for the
We
vehicles.
suspended that term.
Right, and that's something that the county can't do according to the new ordinance is what I was, or the new law that I was getting at. It was approved by the state of Iowa. So the ordinance is much shorter than what it was before. It was a 4-page ordinance before. Now it's only just 2. But it says the Jefferson County Code of Ordinances shall be amended by amending Chapter 6-60 off-road utility vehicles as follows. Chapter 6-60 off-road utility vehicles. Section 1, the purpose of this ordinance is to designate which paved, undivided secondary roads may be used while operating properly registered all-terrain vehicles or off-road utility vehicles as required by Iowa Code Section 32 or 321I.10. Section 2, definitions. All terms used in the ordinance shall have the same definition as found in Iowa Code Chapter 321I as amended. Section 3, operation on roadways permitted. A properly registered ATV or UTV may be operated on all of the following county roadways. All secondary roadways expressly authorized by Iowa Code 321I as amended, and all paved undivided secondary roads or segments thereof within the unincorporated areas of Jefferson County. Such operation shall be done in compliance with all safety and operational rules found in Iowa Code Chapter 321I as amended. All properly registered ATVs and UTVs are expressly authorized to stop at service stations and convenience stores along the lawful route. Section 4, recommendations. The safety of the traveling public is of great importance. Jefferson County also recognizes that each individual operator is primarily responsible for the safe operation of any ATV or UTV on a county roadway. Jefferson County recommends but does not require: 1, anytime an ATV or UTV is operated on a paved secondary road, it shall operate on the shoulder if and when shoulder space is available and it is safe to do so. All persons operating or riding an ATV, UTV are encouraged to wear protective headgear at all times. Section 5, penalties. Any person, firm, partnership, corporation, or other entity or responsible person violating these rules or any provision thereof shall be guilty of a simple misdemeanor and may be subject to any and all penalties described in the Jefferson County Home Rule Ordinance 1-20 in addition to any possible penalties provided under state law. Roman numeral 2, effective date. The ordinance shall be in effect after the final passage, approval, and publication as provided by law. Roman numeral 3, publication, hearing, approval, adoption, and filing of an ordinance amending Jefferson County Code of Ordinances 2010, amending Chapter 6-60, regulating all terrain and off-road utility vehicles on Jefferson County roadways. All right, so that concludes the reading of this ordinance. Do we have any comments from the board?
Change is purely because of state law. Thank you, Pat, for putting this together.
So if I can make a suggestion or two, when I sent the draft to you guys, the section 4 about recommendations was one that is not required. It mirrors language that was in the original ordinance. The purpose at the time was that there was concern about any liability on the county for essentially authorizing the use of a product inconsistent with the manufacturer's recommendations, because manufacturer recommendations do not recommend use of these vehicles on paved roads. Now that it's the county that is making basically authorized all of this use, we I think we're off the hook a little bit on that. Although the county still has one very narrow area that we can make some decisions on. Additionally, as we learned through the COVID situation, a recommendation by a government is, the people are going to do it, and the people who aren't, and it's not enforceable. That's one of the topics that I was looking for some feedback or that you may want to consider. The penalty section, talking about violation of the county ordinance. It can be prosecuted as either a county ordinance violation or a state violation, or both. That's not rare. It happens in a lot of municipalities, but it's It is unusual for the Jefferson County ordinances. I think there's maybe only one other ordinance that we have anything like that included, and I couldn't even tell you what it is off the top of my head, but I know it's in there. Some things that are removed from here or that are interesting, I think, for the public. Obviously, there's no county registration required. In fact, it's not allowed by the new statute. And so that process ends. The county used to do registration on a fiscal year basis. So July 1 was the key day. But it does make mention repeatedly of properly registered ATVs or UTVs. ATVs and UTVs are properly registered through the DNR. That goes through the county recorder's office. Those registrations take place in January or December 31, I think, or January 1.
Is that correct, Kelly?
That's
Kelly.
correct, Pat.
So there's no need for anybody to do any type of registration or any type of a new update or requirement at this point with their UTV. They just do what they normally do with the first of the year with the DNR. Some things that are not also included in this that are included in the state law, and I encourage any operator to review that state law. It is in House File 2130, and it's codified in Iowa Code Chapter 321. 321 I, correct. So it does require proper safety equipment on the vehicle, and it's expressly mentions, but it does not limit it to headlamps, rear lamps, signal lamps, horns, and mirrors. I think the key factor there is not limited to. I have had some of the state law enforcement officers, now that it's a state law, they haven't had the chance to enforce or not enforce this in the past. It's always been up to the cities or the municipalities. But I have had some of the state officers ask me, does that include requiring wearing seatbelts? Does that include that they can't have too high window tint? Does that include all the other safety and equipment requirements for a vehicle, for other motor vehicles? I don't know the answer to that. I'm guessing at some point in time, a court somewhere will tell us the answer to that. But I want operators to be aware that I think that this increases the requirement that they have safety equipment and they understand what they're driving. Some of the other factors that are included in there, when it says properly registered, has to be registered, they have to carry insurance, has to be 18-year-old with a valid driver's license. I'm trying to think. Oh, it also says that this ordinance only covers the unincorporated county roadways. And that's because municipalities, cities, have a little bit different rules. And they have the ability, they have a little bit more discretion than the county does in terms of designating roadways as ATV, UTV routes. But they can also limit some roadways that way. Cities actually can charge a fee. So there's some other things that are included in there. Again, operators be aware that those things are out there. As always, the state law has always excluded agricultural use of ATV, UTVs from the broader requirements that are included in this ordinance and in this chapter 321I. So again, if you're utilizing your equipment just on your own property or for the designated agricultural purposes as outlined by state law, then you are excluded from the requirements in this law and this ordinance. So a lot of information there. I think it's more interesting and important. A lot of the questions the sheriff's office gets, the recorder's office gets are about the things that are not included in this ordinance, but are covered by state law. So I wanted to go through some of those things. I wanted to talk to the board about some areas where I think you might still be able to have some input into the language in this one. And I want to encourage all operators that are operating under the new state law to do so safely and to be aware of all of the safety equipment requirements, because I do think that there are more now than there were under the local ordinances.
Okay. We're still in the public hearing portion of this. Is there anybody from the public that has any other comments that they would like to make about this ordinance? Kelly?
I just want to have one. Pat, also the DNR has gotten back with me and they said that they really won't have anything ironclad until this fall with some of this stuff. So I would not be expecting anything immediate right now. They're saying the fall is going to be when they're going to try and get all this ironed out better. So they're talking with everybody at the state level, the people who drafted the bill, their attorneys' offices that deal with the DNR, and just trying to get this worked out, because even the law enforcement officers who are DNR law enforcement are having questions about what's going on. So I don't know if that helps you.
It doesn't help or hurt me because it's not my law. But,
I know, but we deal with it, you know.
Certainly want to be able to provide good, accurate advice or answer questions appropriately. And a lot of the questions that the operators have and pass on to us are questions that, as you indicated, are sort of being passed up the chain and trying to get consistent, good answers for people. But the answers don't come on the effective date of the law, which was July 1. They come after the fact. So interesting look at the process.
Okay. Is there anybody else that's online with us through Zoom that wants to make a comment on this before we move to close the public hearing? Yes.
You've said a lot of things, and am I to understand that there is no registration or anything, including the DNR at this point? It's because it's one of already built for you.
There is DNR registration. You have to register through the DNR no matter what. That's not off the table at all.
And that's
So that's what people are thinking right now.
That's similar to what you do with boats. You still have to register like you would your boat on an annual basis.
It is still a yearly registration due by the end of December 31st. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. They haven't wavered off that. It's just a county registration and the fees associated with anything above or outside of the DNRs.
And that is not until December, right?
Right. So the register, if anyone had registered their vehicle for 2022 and they did it in December of 21, that registration remains good. It's good until the end of this calendar year. So there's no additional DNR registration requirement under this. If you're currently registered or were registered in December, then you're still registered now. So the only thing that could pop up is if any of the cities in Jefferson County or anywhere else that you're operating decide to have a separate registration, because they are allowed to have a registration fee. Cities are, counties are not. At this point, I'm not aware of any, but that exists in the ordinance or in the state law.
Yeah.
So the December one is the only one we have in place right now.
Right.
That's
And it's
DNR.
staying in place. It is staying in place.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Chris.
I think you answered it. It's Chris from Public Health. My question is, so the cities have not changed their process at all. So you can still ride your side-by-side in those cities. They haven't changed their ordinance, correct? Or is the city of Fairfield, and the city of Fairfield has not
No,
either, correct?
I communicated with Melanie with the city of Fairfield. I know that they are, this is a change in the law that wasn't well shared or publicized. It kind of came about last minute in the session and it's sort of trickled out to different municipalities. So they were actually asking me for the information that I had so that they can evaluate it through their public safety committee or transportation or whatever committee they have. So I would expect that the city of Fairfield will be evaluating their ordinance as well, but they are they're earlier in the process than we are at this point. So nothing new has happened with them.
Thank you for the clarification.
Darren, are you folks planning on any kind of a revision other than what's in this that we talked about?
This is the only revision that we're planning on. The one thing that will go away is the $35 fee for the sticker that you were required to purchase through the sheriff's office. For this is no longer going to be part of the ordinance and it will no longer be a requirement. So there is a difference between those two types of things. Registering your vehicle is like registering a car, except it's through the recorder's office because it's a requirement by the DNR. But to have to go from here to the sheriff's office then to buy the little sticker that you should have on your ATV or UTV will no longer be in effect. And if you don't have a sticker on your vehicle or in your glove box or somewhere to present if you get stopped, that's not a thing any longer. Correct, Bart?
Correct.
Correct. So.
Okay, one of the things that changed was any of that, it was driving on the like Highway 1, for example, the non-divided roads. Is there any?
Well, that portion of our ordinance was only concerning the secondary roads. The Highway 1 is considered a primary road for the primary state system of highways. And I think that's covered under the actual state law portion.
That's correct. That's in the state law section about when you can and cannot operate on those roadways. It still talks about a maximum speed of 35. So that may, it's not 35 for everyone else that's on that roadway. So that's something to be aware of, obviously. And it's limited some to different types of circumstances. So I would encourage you to take a look at the state statute on that, because that's your answer to that is in the state statute. We don't have any authority over that roadway one way or the other.
Okay.
Pat, I have another question for you, and it might contradict something you said, but from my understanding, it is that no cities may charge a fee to operate an off-highway vehicle. And I believe you said the city could keep their ordinance. It is the county that can keep their ordinance, not the city. It says in here, no cities may charge a fee to operate an off-highway vehicle, OHV, OMV, within the city limits, but counties may be able to depend on a designation of county roads to refer counties as to whether to pass is required in their jurisdiction. So what this is telling me on this bill was just the opposite, I believe, of what you said, that the city can pass their own. I believe it's the other way around. It's the counties that can charge, and no, the cities may not charge now. If you read that bill.
Thanks, Kelly. You are correct on that. That the city cannot charge, but they do have more authority to designate roadways within their jurisdiction as to be used or not to be used. So they still have the ability to act and to limit. They can be more limiting in terms of what roadways are not allowed for ATV, UTV use.
Right. I just wanted to make it clear on that one.
And in this case, we're going to drop that fee. That's what we're doing by changing this ordinance. Correct, Pat?
There's no fee in this ordinance. You're doing a lot of things by changing this ordinance, but that's one of the things, no fee.
Okay. All right, is there any other public comment?
Yes.
Yes.
What's the penalties if you don't register? Because some people buy it, they don't bother to register. Is there penalties involved?
Just the seller at the buyer has to pay.
No, there isn't a penalty if you're a farmer, and there isn't a penalty if you don't register them, but if you're gonna ride them on the road, it has to be registered. Farmers are the only ones that are exempt from that. But if you do not register it, you're gonna have a hard time with some insurance companies because they wanna have the title number, the registration number, and that VIN number off that machine in order to register and get you insurance. Also, if it's stolen, if we can put that into the statewide, US-wide search for stolen vehicles as well. So there's a plus to doing that. And as a farmer, you can register it once, and then you don't have to register it again until you're ready to bring it up, or if you're gonna ride trails or something like that outside of the farm. And it's only a $5 penalty no matter when you register it. But also it makes it a lot easier for you to sell the machine, because nowadays people aren't going to buy your machines unless you have paperwork, because they're finding out they have to bond these machines and it costs a lot of money. It's like $130 some to get these things bonded if you don't have the proper paperwork so they can register them.
Thank you.
Anything else? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Drish, a second from Sandquist to close the public hearing. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. So do I have a motion to pass this ordinance from the first reading to the second reading?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Sandquist and a second from Drish to pass this ordinance change from the first reading to the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. All right, so we'll have to put this on the agenda again in 2 weeks from now so that we can have proper notification of the second reading, but we will go through a public hearing and a notice. So at this time, do we want to set the public hearing time and date for the second reading of this ordinance? That would be August 1st at 9 a.m. again. Okay, I would accept a motion to approve August 1st at 9 a.m. for public hearing and second reading of the ATV UTV
So
ordinance.
moved.
Second.
Moved by Drish, second by Sandquist. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Let's move on then in our agenda. We're going to talk about ARP updates. Dee, why don't you begin?
Sure. We've been having work sessions for a long time, so I thought it'd be kind of good just to review where we are, what's on the list, what's potential on the list. The county's received to date $1,776,794, and probably about October, we should
Yes.
see the other half.
Yes.
And so as we have looked at this, I know we've talked a lot about economic development as a priority, because that is one of the things in the Code of Iowa that is one of our responsibilities as county supervisors. So we've been really looking at that, and plus county, some things operationally that it's helpful to have the money to do that we would need to be spending money on. Things that we have approved, the Zoom system, and we had a lot of feedback that the old system, people couldn't hear us because the mic system was bad, plus it didn't lend itself very well. We decided we wanted to keep Zoom after COVID. We didn't have to, but we like that option for people that can't come in person. And if they can't attend on a Monday at 8:30, they have the option to look at it later. So we felt that was important. So that was $24,400. We did some things with cybersecurity. That was $3,190. Jefferson County Kids, which is a child care center, which again contributes to economic development, because if people have places for their kids, they can work, and that helps the employers and it helps the employees. That's $400,000. Masden Barnes, Susie, you're on this committee, $25,000. So They made a request, and if you want to tell us.
Yeah,
what they're
they
gonna
made a
do.
request maybe to have some sort of a shelter or a covering so people could sit in inclement weather or get out of the sun. And with COVID, outdoor things are great. So I believe they're proceeding with that and other improvements. Yeah.
And then Conservation Board, we have two potential things. One that I believe is just wrapping up, and Sean can talk about that. And what we're working with for the Conservation Board, it's their 50th year anniversary, and they plan to do some site plan and to really kick off the next 50 years. So why don't you tell us, we did $160,000 for.
Okay, yeah, we, that's actually almost done. The closing was last week. And what it is an addition to Jefferson County Park, a small 14 acres roughly, that was available on the southeast. The park's kind of a big jagged boundaries, but it ties together, like as you come in the entrance road, there's kind of a nice wooded bottom that lies in behind the subdivision there to the east of the entrance road. And it's actually was part of that subdivision. And then that ties into what you're talking about. We have, in the last 20 years, we acquired the Holmes Farm, which lies between our entrance road and T Boulevard. Jeanette Holmes was just a nice local lady that wanted her property to become part of the park after she passed on. And so that property is partially crop field right now and partially natural, but we're looking at doing some expansion that you talked about. We have a landscape architect with Shive Hattery that's been working with us for probably a year now, and we're just hopefully going to wrap that up in August, kind of finalizing some things. But basically, we want to put a access road through that property and a campground. I don't know how much time you want me to spend, but the other part of the money that you're talking about contributing is going towards that campground development or expansion. We have a campground in Jefferson County Park, but it's full a lot and it's 40 years old. The campers now are huge. Our campground was built for a lot smaller, and in the location it's hard to expand. So we have this property. We have a lot of ideas for development. We just don't have funds. And like you said, that in the last few years, it's, outdoor recreation and exercise and those kind of things have really there's been a surge because a lot of the other things you could do just weren't considered safe. And I think that's going to hang on and be a benefit to the community with this expansion. But the property acquisition is basically a done deal now. That deed, I don't have at hand. That will rest in the auditor's office. And basically that will kind of provide a buffer between this subdivision. Over the last 25 years, Jefferson County Park has kind of become surrounded by, we have West Hills on the west side, and there's been a lot of, acreage type houses built. And I don't know the future, but I suspect there may be a annexation at some point by the city, just because of the proximity of Jefferson County Park. Actually, the north, what we call the Jarvis property, is inside city limits already. That was given to us by FEDA many years ago. But basically, a lot of times the users and the usage is almost like a city park because we're so close to Fairfield. And I don't know how, like I said, how much detail. We've got some other plans for shelters and other things on that property, but I don't think this money plays into that yet.
I have a question about part of being annexed into the city. There's no actual homes that are on it that city residents live in that piece of property that you're talking about?
No, it's all out in the county still.
Okay.
And
then it could be the position that the county would want to ask for de-annexation. of that portion of property, so it all becomes county rather than a portion of it's city and the remainder of the park being county. And it's not unusual to have the city de-annex something that won't be used for any development or anything that they have to supply utilities to, like sewer and water.
Well, and yeah, and that's to be ironed out in the future. I just have heard whisperings of, they'd like to annex this portion or this portion, and I think it's down the road ways. And we are looking at using, there's a city sewer main that runs through this property, and we have city water that we use. So we're looking at that as part of the development. We're not 10 miles out here. We're basically using city services in our park and have to acknowledge that, but.
Right.
So what has been spent of ARP funds is the 160,000. Now there's a potential, which we've talked about several times at this meeting recently. We applied for a Destination Iowa grant, and that would be a total of 440,000 should we get it. And the state matches that. We have to pay 60%, so you get 40% on top of that.
Well, we did it a little, we're putting in some of our money as well, which is county
Correct.
money, but the part of it's art money. And we're hoping from the Destination Iowa grant to bring in 400,000 through that. And then with a couple 100,000, roughly, that's not the exact number. It's about $1 million development. And a big portion of that is a road. This property has nothing in it, no access right now. It's a farm. I mean,
Yeah.
and so we're starting from scratch, and that's why it costs so much.
We have applied, however, there's stiff competition, so we will be extremely surprised if we get that grant. However, if you don't try, you don't get it, so we'll see.
Well, and you can get a portion of what you applied for. It doesn't mean that you're going to get the whole thing, but you may get something less than the total, depending on how they want to divvy that money out. And we've also received an email back that the application was submitted and has been accepted. And so it should be sometime in the next month that we hear something back as far as the decision that's made for how they're going to divide that money up and share it out. But there was a tremendous amount of people that have applied for these dollars. And so they're kind of in a quandary on how that's all going to work at this point in time, because again, there's way more requests for money than what they have money to provide through that grant process. Just to be fair with everybody so that everybody kind of knows.
So that's what we spent. And then most recently, we purchased the former First National Bank drive-through. We've been looking for buildings for a long time. And we've looked at some others, and this fit. It's mostly for office space, some potential for storage space. You can speak more to those, the storage needs. We've not determined how it's going to be used for sure. We will have work sessions on that. So if you see a space planning work session and you're interested in that, please attend.
I've been talking with with Horizon Architecture, who is an architect that's been working with us on many projects that we've had here at the courthouse in the last 3 years. We have discussed the fact of having 2 preliminary sketched ideas of building layouts, depending on which direction that the board decides they want to move with it, so that we can get an idea of how many people can be in that office and how it can be divided up and what would be needed to improve that. Dollar amounts can't be given on those remodeling projects until you have at least an idea of what you want to put into the building itself. Right now, all we would get would be just some preliminary sketches and no dollar amounts attached to it until a later date. So if you ask what it's going to cost for each one when it comes in, it'll still only be a very loose ballpark estimate of remodel costs for the buildings, but both ways should be under 200,000 at the most.
And there's more options that we can probably explore at space painting workshops. So
Right.
that's what we've spent. And so if my math is correct, which is questionable, but I put it on the computer this morning, so I'll see. We have a total of $1,413,590. And that includes the destination Iowa. So that bumps that up that we've either spent or have applied for the grant for. Other things on our list.
Dee, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You didn't say what the building cost was when you're.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
361,000.
Thank you.
Erin.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And we've talked before about some of the need for that. We've added a public defender office. We added a judge in the courthouse. And all these people take space. The public defenders over at the Maple Street site. We have storage needs. I know Darren's worked with Kelly a lot on that. And we have records that have to
Well,
be kept for.
Not necessarily with
Long time.
Kelly on that. It's mostly with the court and documents that the court has. And the documents that Kelly takes care of
Need to be here.
pretty much are 90% online now or covered. So that needs to be straightened out right now, that it's not with Kelly that we're concerned with. It's not with the records from the treasurer's office, who has his records all online right now. It is all the district court records that are here in this building that date back to the time that Iowa became a state in many cases, and even previous to that. But that's the responsibility of the court and the court clerk's office here at the courthouse. And again, they've started that process in many clerk's offices across the state, but they have not done that here yet. So until we do that, we still have to keep all of those records in file cabinets in the building or a building that the county owns, whether that's the courthouse or whether that's in another building. And so that was another reason for looking at that as partial storage.
Do you have any other?
Okay, so on our list of potential projects,
Yeah, well,
we have a list of potential projects, and I use the word potential because nothing's carved in stone. But just for the sake of communication, we want to update the county website. And so that's on the list. Broadband, gosh, was it a year ago? We met with all the different providers separately. And then we met with Natel more recently, who tells us he can do the whole county for, it's either 750,000 or 775,000. Law Center building, Bart, if you want to talk a little bit about your need for evidence storage.
Sure, we're in the early stages of planning an addition to the law center, not a attached addition, but something out back. We're also, it was built 22 years ago. We've taken steps the last 10 years to upgrade the building and stuff that needed replaced. And obviously, we probably have a building that's can go 50 plus years. So we need some storage needs also. There's some, we've outgrown evidence, we've outgrown storage. We need a better area for armory and response vehicles when needed. So we're in the early stages of putting something right behind the law center now, if it's approved through the money. So we still have to look at the solar thing also to see if we can support that and maybe something else that we use out there. But there's specific needs that we need, that have changed in 20 plus years. So we're looking at doing that versus asking the taxpayers for $8 to $10 million to build a new facility. So I think we can get by with what we're planning.
What's your estimate for the building?
We're gonna be somewhere around 300,000.
And then,
And then I would probably replace the concrete would be in front of it. That was already,
in,
and I'm not asking for that out of that money, but we're doing 2 other sections this year yet, but that's a $65,000 replacement back there, so.
okay. And then last but not least, the project we have budgeted for, even back when Lee was here, we never got to it for some reason, was the courthouse. And so why don't you talk about what our needs are here?
Okay, we had the building itself evaluated mostly due to handicap accessibility. Our bathrooms here are not truly handicap accessible. So there's a proposal to build a family style handicap accessible restroom out in front of where a storage area is at, right next to the entrance to the restrooms, and then also doing some updating in those restrooms. We have estimates on what it would cost to do that. I talked about those at the last meeting that we had. We also are looking at north entrance to the building, adding a larger landing pad outside of the door so that you don't have to stand down low and try to pull the door open and then come up onto the pad to get into the building. The doors themselves on the north side of the building are not in compliance with state fire code. They need push bar exits. There isn't a need for 2 doors. 1 door is adequate for the number of people that are in this building. At the time, it'd be a 40-inch wide door, but the whole transom area would have to be redone and replaced. Safety balusters would be put out so that cars wouldn't run into the expanded landing that would be out in front of the doorway. The north door will always and forever remain a non-handicap accessible doorway. The other project that we talked about was the south entryway. We have had problems with the doors on the south entryway for as long as I can remember. Even before I became a county supervisor, there was problems with them. One side of the door out there, we have to keep shut down, which is a safety hazard when trying to exit the building. Because if it's open, then the other door doesn't close properly and neither one latches in place like it should. We've had some temporary fixes done to the one door that's used most downstairs here at the south entrance, and it's at its last leg of trying to fix and repair to put it back together. It needs to be replaced. Along with that, we have talked about expanding an entryway out a little bit farther to have 3 doorways coming into the entryway, a heated floor. That will also help the building heat because you won't have all the heat and cooling loss every time the front door is open because it would go directly outside. This area would be in addition to the front of the building. And so there's going to need to be a lot of discussion about that. The very front of the courthouse would look a little different than what it does now, but the architect again has done this kind of work in several other courthouses, several other historic type buildings in order to make something that blends into the building so that it's not as visibly noticeable. It would be a glass type enclosure with a roof over the top of it. So that it would, again, it would help reduce heating and cooling costs here in the building because you don't lose that massive heat or cooling loss every time somebody's standing there holding the door open and talking to somebody else on their way in or out.
and the other thing we want to accomplish with the restrooms is touchless.
Yeah,
So that
everything.
we have the
touchless.
automatic dryers, automatic toilets and flush and all that, really bring that up to current day standards. And so the cost to the courthouse project, the restrooms and north door together would be 81,000. The south entrance is
the south entrance.
south entrance is the one that's expensive.
Yeah,
It's
that would be about
224,000. So,
then there's still gonna be money from that second half left over even after doing all of those
If we do
projects
all
we
this.
just talked about.
so that's kind of everything we've got on the list for now. And yeah.
Right. And we have had one city come and ask if we could give some of the county ARP money to them for a specific use. But again, all the cities here in Jefferson County, incorporated cities in Jefferson County, received ARP money, just like the county did as well. And most of them have either spent it all or know what they're going to spend it on at this point in time. So.
Okay.
All right. Any more discussion on ARP? Okay, we'll discuss and consider Walton Club delinquent taxes. And we have our treasurer Mark with us here to go over this as well.
I'm just bringing in the treasurer at the Walton Club. Right now, we owe $36,539 in principal and interest for the club. 9,460 of that is interest and penalties, and then 27,079 is the actual tax. And I don't know how far back they quit paying the taxes on the building. When I came on the board, it was about 45 or 50,000 that we owed. We've been paying down, but we're accumulating $500,000 or $500 a month in interest and penalties. And I just can't see us digging out of this hole with those kind of penalties coming at us all the time. I'd like to ask the board if they could forgive the interest and penalties. And we would make a one chunk payment now of about $14,000 on the back taxes. And if you could give us a stay on interest and penalties going forward, so we could try to take that money and pay it on the principal rather than, or on the taxes rather than on just interest and penalties.
Okay.
I did a little research on this, and this was somewhat COVID related, was it?
Well, some of it was because we basically had to shut down inside usage for a long time. I know a lot of it goes back before that, but right now we're just kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Right.
And we're one of the most reasonably priced places that you can have a class reunion or a wedding reception or a funeral dinner, or because of COVID, we no longer can bring out the nursing home people like we used to. We always brought them out and took them on golf cart rides and served them coffee and cookies and that kind of thing. But COVID has kind of stopped that for us. We have a gentleman that offers kids free golf lessons. So I think we bring a lot to the community, but we're also old enough in everything that we own, including tractors and water pumps and roofs, and that we're just not digging ourselves out. And to be honest, right now, we're about $110,000 into the bank.
Okay.
So with all of these things on top of each other, it's kind of hard for us to get a grip on. So we pick one project and try to get it paid down. And right now it's to get the county paid down.
And Mark, I know I asked you when I saw this on the agenda, as I normally do when I see something like this. So why don't you explain why this is different?
The situation with the Walton Club building is that it is a building on leased land, which means it doesn't go to tax sale. It just accumulates interest at a clip of 1.5% per month and just keeps going. To Des's point, they have made tremendous strides in the last few years to get this down. The building itself, just this last year, was almost $8,500 in property tax alone. So with the 27 that they have right now, they're almost adding the interest amount next year for taxes that are due. They also have a lease with the city, which is the land that it sits on, for the course as well, and they are completely current with all of those. So the land for the course cart sheds, and that is about half of what the clubhouse itself is.
So does the city have any responsibility here? Has this come up before when you were over in that world?
No, not this, just the addition of the Walton Lake subdivision that went in and the homes that were out there and then incorporating those into the city. That type of thing.
When Mark and I talked about this, the way he explained it to me is basically, is it better to get 75 cents on the dollar than nothing? Which is like, that's one perspective to look
There
at.
are multiple ways to take a look at this. One way is that as it sits right now, unless there's something with the lease that terminates it and the city then takes over the building, which I have no idea if that's the case or not. That would be Aaron Quicker or even a Pat McAvan question. It just sits there.
Okay. Is there any law in the state governing interest and interest payments on delinquent taxes that if we were to just forgive the interest and stop accruing interest from a particular date forward, as was suggested, anything that would prevent the board from doing something like that and then just continuing to get extra payments for the delinquent portion of the taxes?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I think it would be a two-step process. One would be the current amount that's due delinquent, and then a second one for like a suspension of the taxes for the upcoming year to where it would not accrue anymore.
So explain that a little bit better. I mean, it sounds like, okay, there was $27,000 that's owed in taxes right now. Yes, Pat.
Hey, I've got a 10 o'clock, so I need to go. But there is a provision in the code requesting suspension, and the county has a form, an application form that we've used in the past for property owners.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that was completed in this instance.
I have not seen something like that yet.
I don't know if that I don't know. We've had one. We talk about fees and penalties only. So it's an interesting topic that I can look at if that is necessary moving forward. But it's for the board's perspective, I understand why this is different because it's property on leased land. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not the only property tax suspension or request that you may be getting, and you may want to make sure that you're doing things consistently throughout. So that's
right. So that we're not setting some sort of precedence.
Correct. But I do have to go. So let me know if you need something from me moving forward.
Why don't we table this for a week so we can talk to Pat?
Right, and then that form, I would think, would be in the auditor's office. So why don't we make sure that you get one, Desiree, and then you can fill it out to the extent that you're able to fill it out, and then bring it back with you in a week, and we can put that on the agenda for next week.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
For your
thank
time.
You bet, Desiree. All right. We're going to move on then to make committee reports.
I have none.
It's Seal Governance Board, and there's a new suicide hotline, 988. It's going to go national. There should be press releases coming out about that. If anybody wants to stop up at the mental health office upstairs, they have, a few weeks ago when I reported from last month's meeting, they were buying some things to get out so people know the website for the Southeast Iowa link, which will take you to a lot of resources for mental health. So if anybody's interested in that, they're in now and they're upstairs in Sandy's office.
Okay. I had a Rust Board meeting last Wednesday. again, we're kind of tied up with one city that has a huge delinquency going on with it right now, and trying to figure out ways to get them either caught up with it or have them make a decision as far as what they're going to do. But it could be a similar situation that went on with Mount Union in Henry County, where they withdrew completely from Russ and then also de-incorporated from being a city itself. It's kind of a tough situation. It's not here in Jefferson County, but it's one that affects all of the billing that's done, and could end up in a increase in rates for existing users of the services in all the communities that are using the service at this point in time. The board bought a new septic pump truck system, and we've been putting that to pretty great use so far. We've had a lot of private people calling to have their systems pumped, as well as using it to pump out the community systems that are already part of the Russ system here in this portion of Iowa. We've hired an extra person to run that piece of equipment nearly full time now, and it will continue to generate enough money not only to pay for itself, but to pay for the employee, as well as bring some extra money into the Russ system.
So if somebody has a septic tank that needs pumped, what's it cost
So
them?
I can't tell you what the cost is off the top of my head, because it varies from size of septic system to septic system.
Okay.
But you can contact the office in Mount Pleasant. They can give you price quotes, that kind of thing. They're still going to do time of transfer type pumpings and inspections of systems when it comes to sale of property from one person to another. A lot of counties and cities have changes in their time of transfer regulations and rules as far as what's going on. The final thing that I need to talk about is the sewage system problem that we're currently having with a couple of properties in Pleasant Plain. Both of them have been inspected. We'll hear some more about that at the Board of Health meeting coming up this Thursday evening at 6 o'clock, and get a full report on it. But we've had a report that there are people that live in dwellings up there that aren't connected to water or sewer, and they're using buckets and getting water from various other sources in order to be able to use in the homes that they're occupying. And I use the word homes loosely because they're not really that in my mind. But people live where people need to live these days. So there's going to be an update made on that at the public health meeting to the Board of Health, who oversees environmental health and is part of their budget. So we'll get it, have Dan Miller come and give that update at the meeting. Other than that, I think that's about it. We did get everything finished up so we could get the trim back on here in the courthouse around our bookshelves, so it looks a little bit better now. And again, our Zoom system was part of the reason why that was taken down, and wiring was run through the wall over there for a lot of that. We also need to, at some point in time, look at lawn mowing services over at the building that we just purchased. Currently, Bass Lawn Care is doing the mowing over in that area. They had been doing it for the previous owner. They also do it with the neighboring properties that are all right there in that area. But it would probably be a good idea to put it out for bids until we can come up with a trailer and new hitch for the county pickup trucks, so that we can haul the mower across town to get it there and mow the property. But until that time comes, the rest of the summer isn't going to be all that long to have the property taken care of on a private contract type basis. And again, I talked to Bass Lawn Care about continuing to do that. At this point, it's $65 a mowing with a $5 service charge for fuel. So the total would be $70 each mowing that they do over at that property at this point. That's all I have. Okay. All right, let's move on then to any public comments. Do we have anybody online that would like to make a public comment? We'll go with you guys first. Again, we still have Deb Book, Marianne Nordyke, Tammy Merrill, and Tom Drish on with us through Zoom. Hearing no comments from them. Anybody in the room have any public comments? Chris?
I do. I just want to give you guys an update. As you know, we've been seeing an increase in the positivity rate again in the community with reported COVID cases. Now that there's no reporting mechanism for home testing, so if you do a rapid antigen test, that's not counted in the numbers anywhere. But the last couple of weeks, we've seen a significant spike and a significant increase in the positivity rate. So those would be tests that are the Test Iowa kits, or you've gone to your medical provider and been tested, and then those are tracked and then submitted. I just want to give you an update on that. The other thing, I wanted to reference an email that I sent to the Board of Health, the Board of Supervisors, and County Attorney, and then I went on and sent it to Aaron Quaker and Connie Boyer, Mayor Boyer. It was dated, and I can make a copy of it, April 13th of this, it says April 13th of 2022, and it was just referencing why my recommendation was to stay at the current location for the health department. I know that you're not to the decision-making process, but when you hear in the community that there's lots of scuttlebutt going on, and I outlined the reasons why we should stay there. As far as expenditures goes and the amount of money that was spent and the updates that have been made to that current location. I'm happy to make another copy of that. And I think, because if we were to move, it doesn't matter where we were going to move to, there'd be a lot of expense associated with moving the health department. For example, we have to have a generator backup for our vaccine storage units, which was a shared expense originally. And then our secure door would have to be moved. And we know with COVID, we all would need our own offices with the door shut. So when you're doing contact tracing, there's no way to hear another conversation on the phone like a telemarketer. So those things. So I'm happy to make another copy of this or email it to you guys again, explaining that. And I know that I did request, to try to move forward with a 2080 agreement between the city and the county. And that's referenced in this document as well. I've been at the health department 15 years, and as you know, I personally have been requesting a 2080 agreement since that time. There's no indication from the city side of things that they're going to relocate us. I've had conversation with Aaron and Connie both as far as having access to more space up front if we need to when the fire department moves. I think the only thing that the public health department had requested of ARPA funding, just for clarification, is if we get to stay here at this location. I know I brought to you guys a quote for 2 windows on the north side of the building. They're original windows, so they're single pane glass and they're not very efficient. The other thing is to update the sinks, like you referenced, for touchless sinks, touchless toilets, and hand blow dryers. And the other thing is new flooring, but that's all dependent upon a 2080 agreement, because the flooring is from the original remodel when that was done, when the health department moved into that location. And I can't remember, it's been 22 years ago, 21 years ago. It's been a long time, because I referenced things with Peggy, my former office manager, when she was there. So, because they've been there for several years before I took this position. So for the good of the order and for the record, that's what I wanted to talk about. I've not been able to come to the ARPA meetings. I've been busy. I know everybody has been. So Do you guys have any questions while I'm here about public health, or Darren referenced the meeting Thursday night? So yeah, we do have a meeting Thursday night. Just to clarify though, Dan is aware of that situation, correct? Because I had emailed him and asked him
Yeah,
to
Dan's
put it on the
already,
agenda, but he didn't give me that. I received that from you, so I'm just making sure.
right, he's also sent an email out since then.
Okay, all right.
So.
I don't
and
get his email,
he-
so
he
that's fine.
acknowledged that.
Okay,
And I don't know why you wouldn't, he's part of the public health environment.
I'm just
And
making sure that I don't
so-
need to follow up on something
No.
for that meeting Thursday. Okay, that was my point of clarification. Anything else for me? Okay, thank you guys, appreciate it.
Any other comments? No? You didn't have one, Lee?
The invitation's open to come visit the law center, we'll take you on a tour.
Yeah, we were kind of on a rush to look at things the other day when we left here. So
That's fine.
that's why we didn't actually come in to the
Maybe
law
we can
center,
do
but I
that
do
next
want
week after the meeting.
to see that. Yeah,
Because I think it'd be nice to go together so you
Yeah,
can give us the whole tour.
yeah, exactly.
It'd be nice for us all to go together so we can all see that.
Mhm.
Bart, I do have a question. Who do all those bikes belong to?
Yeah.
You or the city?
Those are bikes that the city police department collects. You know, people call
I wish
in
they
and
would,
say bikes left
Have an
here.
auction.
And they do occasionally, but they do need to do something with them. So, no, it has nothing to do with me, but
Okay.
yes, you're right.
Okay.
And the stuff that I talked about earlier is not for bicycles. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know if the city could come up with a better way of handling that situation, but they collect back there for long.
Yeah, it gets in everybody's way, I would imagine.
So.
All right. Okay, we'll move on then to allow claims and approve reports.
So moved.
Second,
I have a motion from Grish, a second from Sandquist. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Okay, we have on our agenda for tomorrow morning at 9 AM, meet with property owners to discuss fence line. That's come to us as a board because one of the people that are involved with that particular dispute is currently the trustee for the area, and trustees normally take care of fence disputes and fence use. But we'll talk about that more tomorrow. So I would accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion from Grish, a second from Sandquist. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you very much, everyone.